How's it going, everybody? And welcome to another episode of the Barely There podcast. Be sure to follow the podcast on Twitter at Barely There Pod. I'm Duke Coughlin. You can follow me at that pod guy Duke on Twitter, as well as the Ayatollah of Capicola, Lucas Perfetti. You can follow him on Twitter at Lucas Perfetti 46. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube. Be sure to join the chat. Subscribe on Spotify, Apple, wherever you want to listen to your podcast. But today we are covering the Chicago Bears versus the New York Giants. Obviously, it was a pretty rough game on Sunday. The Giants ended up winning 20-12. The Chicago Bears tried to win by death of 4 field goals, but it didn't end up working out like that. Honestly, it's hard to win a lot of football games when you can't score touchdowns. But I feel like you're going to get a little bit different of a narrative from me and Lucas today than you've probably gotten in a while in regards to Justin Fields and the offense, because there were some definite differences from what we've seen the first 3 weeks. And obviously some big differences on the offensive line and really what we saw on defense as well. Not necessarily the most perfect game on either side of the football. There were positives. There were probably more negatives. But Lucas, just, knee-jerk reaction. How you feeling about the game? Kind of had a day to let it simmer, and any loss sucks, but how you feeling?
Yeah, man, I think the biggest takeaway I have from the loss itself is there's no team on paper for the rest of the schedule, maybe the Falcons, that the Bears actually should be favored in, and they have to go and get every single one of their wins. But the way the roster is currently constructed, I said this on a couple episodes ago, but there were some games in 2019, 2020, 2021, even that were like, okay, Bears aren't playing great, but they have the Texans. They should beat the shit out of them. They have the Giants. They should beat the shit out of them. That's gone now. Like, there is no team that the Bears should beat the shit out of. They're going to have to prove every single, really at this point, fan, critic, and everyone wrong, and go out and steal their wins against some of these teams that we would consider comparable, right, in terms of where they're at in their rebuild and where they're at and just in their standing in the NFL. So that's my biggest takeaway from the game. And yeah, we're going to have some different narratives, I think, or at least me specifically.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we both had some pretty honest conversations last week in regards to Justin Fields. Probably the top things we were looking at was his ability to get the football out quick, committing to his decisions out of the snap, going to his first read, being able to take the check down, being able to take what a defense is giving him. And, I think you have to look at like the first 2 throws of his game. The first one being a pass to Darnell Mooney that he took his 3-step drop, stepped into his throw, and was very confident with getting the ball out of his hand. And man, when Justin's throwing like that, that's really something to behold, because that's where you really see his value and you really see his potential. I thought it was funny that the commentators really went into this game, and how couldn't they? Really negative about, how Justin Fields held on to the ball and he's had issues throwing the football. And they were really talking about his accuracy. And then the first two throws of the game, to Darnell Mooney they were dynamite, man.
Because you think missiles.
Yeah, because you think of the first play where it was like a post for like 15, 18 yards to Darnell Mooney on the first passing play. And then you look at the first passing play on the next drive, it was the like the 50-yard shot to Darnell Mooney. And like what I take away from that throw was just kind of how effortless Justin put it out there, and he still almost ended up overthrowing Darnell Mooney. That's just kind of how much effortless, like, freaking throw power and accuracy he has downfield. And it's a little bit of a taste of like what we saw out of Justin last year, being able to set that up, being able to run the football and keep a defense honest to the point where you can, take that throw over the top, and being able to capitalize on blitzes, which is something that obviously later in the game kind of took over what we were doing on offense, and it really hindered us, essentially because our interior offensive line was in shambles at a certain point in this football game. But some positive signs. I think the stat that was floating around on Twitter was that Justin Fields was 10 for 15 on the day when he had a clean pocket to work with, and that's a very, very positive sign moving forward. But I believe he was like 1 for 7, 1 for 8 when he had less than 3 seconds to throw, which is that's very alarming on the flip side of that. So some positives there, but definitely you kind of just have to take what we can get. The bar has gotten so low with Justin, honestly, early on in the season, that really any sort of incremental progress is a plus. And at least from that aspect of a really brutal day on offense, that was kind of promising in my eyes.
Well, and I think at a minimum, we're back to square one. And that's, hey, Justin Fields could fling the fucking ball down the field accurately, right? Like there were some things that I was specifically worried about with, hey man, that throw to Cole Kmet, he never floats that. Hey, that throw to Darnell Mooney, he's always at least given Darnell Mooney a chance to make a play. And that's where I was starting to get worried. Is his mental game starting to take effect, right? Like we heard him talk about how he ran one of the plays because he didn't want to be too far in front of the line because of the previous penalty the week before. Like those were some of the things that came out, and I felt really encouraged by it. One thing, I mean, it wasn't a perfect game by any means. If you look at it, he threw 50% on the day and had like 176 yards and a fumble, I believe, which I can't even put that fumble on him. What I'm getting at really is this is the first game where I felt like everything around him made him perform at a worse level. Because in my opinion, he came out firing and playing well. He still is not hitting his hot reads. Like whatever it is, Lucas Patrick is supposed to know protection calls and all that shit. He was on the field the whole fucking game. Like Justin he's not able to identify as hot and understand where that's coming from, what zone is going to be evacuated, and how he just needs to flip the ball out. Like if he's able to complete 3 or 4 of those in the beginning of a game, that's going to keep a defense so fucking honest. They're not going to, because right now that's what they're doing. Like this was the first game we saw a very deliberate attack on Sam Mustipher, on Larry Borum, on Lucas Patrick, the guys that struggle in pass pro. We saw Sam Mustipher getting head up with a nose on him, head up, 5-man rush, 2 linebackers stacked at the line of scrimmage against tackles. Like we saw them be like, you know what? Sam Mustipher cannot handle this, so we're going to come after you. This was the one game, when you look at the past 4 games, this is the worst defensive front we've played, and they were missing Leonard Williams, and this kid was running for his fucking life. Like in the previous games, it wasn't great, but I thought it was well put together enough for him to be able to make more plays than he did. This game, I do feel like what was going on around him was fucking killing him. Like that internal pressure between Patrick and Mustipher it's almost impossible to operate, right? And like maybe was too hard on Justin a couple weeks ago because there were times where he could have stepped up into a clean pocket and he didn't do it, and he bailed out left or right, made his tackles look bad. But maybe that's because he felt this coming, right? Like maybe I should give the kid the little bit more of the benefit of the doubt. But in terms of him protecting himself and what he can do better, getting those hots out, dude, you have to understand, hey, this fucking linebacker is blitzing. That means this guy's going to break free instantly. Like all I have to do is wait for this guy to come up and get engaged with the lineman, and I can just flip it up, right? Like that's the shit that, I mean, I'm not asking Justin Fields to learn that overnight, because that's the shit that has to be developed. That's the Tom Brady type stuff, the Aaron Rodgers type stuff. Like, oh yeah, you want to blitz me? I'm going to kill you for that, right? And it's going to be a 3-yard pass that gets taken for an extra 20 yards after the catch. So something that will come with time. But in terms of being decisive and just letting the ball come out, there were a couple times he held it a little too long, but he was much more, okay, I'm seeing this, I'm just going to fucking gun it. And to be honest, Luke Getsy really is starting to look like an asshole, because like, I don't know if it's Flus, I don't know if it's Getsy, but this was the type of game that you should have had enough confidence in Justin Fields to realize like, hey, we're going to need to throw the ball a little bit more. The running game's not working today. They are stacking the fuck out of the box. In previous games, they were saying, hey, we're going to make Justin beat us with the quick game. Now teams are saying, we're not going to let this team run for 200 yards on us. We're going to make Justin Fields beat us on checking or getting over blitzes and things like that. So didn't see nearly enough fucking pocket movement. Didn't see nearly enough max protect. Like, there were no adjustments in the red zone. We were getting loaded fronts and kept trying to run the ball. That's why we fucking field goal, or we're trying to field goal New York to death. So a lot of problems offensively, but I will say the number one most important thing in this season is Justin Fields, and I think he took a step forward yesterday. At least got himself back to where he should be feeling confident. I know the stat line isn't great, but like when you take it into perspective, a lot of those plays were fucking awful.
Well, and I think if you can really, like, if you actually watch the game, you definitely know kind of what me and Lucas are talking about here when it comes into regards of like not seeing what the box score kind of shows you, but actually seeing like how he was making things work when things broke down. And that was kind of the number one thing that I saw out of Justin yesterday was like, I understand people want him to sit in the pocket more often, and I really want to see him be able to sit in the pocket and deliver. But I thought he was doing a really good job of recognizing when these blitzes were coming and being able to immediately make that first step outside. I think one of the biggest problems he was running into the first few weeks, especially on play action, was kind of like stopping when he was kind of rounding or trying to go around the contain. And instead of trying to just beat that guy to the corner and then making a decision outside, because I think that's really where he's going to be at his best. We saw it specifically last week where there were a couple plays where he was trying to roll out and he would stop to try to look for a play downfield, and it would slow him down. And he'd get contained down, and he really wouldn't be able to have a running lane on that type of a play. He was being a lot more confident with his decisions when he was making them. He wasn't second guessing himself nearly as much. I will say, though, I think the one play that made me almost rip my freaking hair out watching it was, I believe it was late in the second quarter, early in the third, but they had a trip set on the right and Justin was in shotgun, and you had Kyron Thibodeau just kind of looking around confused of who he had to cover on that play. It was an obvious mismatch, and Justin never scanned to the right side of the field to even look at it pre-snap. And it's plays like that where, I complained early on about Justin scanning the field too much after his first read once the play starts. But what he really has to start doing is being able to get a full look at everything that's happening on the field before he snaps that football. Like, take that second look to the right, take that second look to the left. Like, you see every great quarterback in the league is scanning the entire field before that ball is snapped. And that's something Justin needs to get a little bit better on, because that could have been that was a play that was open immediately. I'm not even going to pretend to try to pronounce the wide receiver's last name, number 17, who was playing a couple snaps here and there. You know what I'm talking about, Lucas, right?
With the long hair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that not Webster? Like, I randomly was like, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he was a guy on this play that was wide open in his route, and Justin ended up going to him, but it was just far too late at that point. He ended up rolling out, trying to make a play happen after. And it's like, Justin, if you just recognize that there's that much of a mismatch with a guy who's notably used as a pass rusher, that's something you have to just take the snap, delivered immediately. That's me nitpicking, but I think that's a play that once Justin gets going, that's going to be dynamite, because it's being able to recognize mismatches like that really, really set good quarterbacks apart from great quarterbacks. But overall, man, I thought Justin took steps in the right direction. He ran when he needed to. He ran in clutch points to get the first down on third and even third and long a couple times. Like, he was picking the right times to run. He wasn't just running to run, which is something we've seen out of him before. I still don't like play action across his body. It just has not worked for us so far. And the tight end screen just continues to not work for us. But I do like how we were getting Darnell Mooney involved downfield, and I really feel like that's something that's going to continue moving forward. I think the next step for this offense is getting Cole Kmet involved over the middle of the field. But until we can really see that consistently from Luke Getsy and play calling, that's something we're really going to have to wait and see. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the screen game is very puzzling to me, because for a team that sees that much pressure, they should have a lot more success with the screen game. To be honest, a lot of the screens are outside and they're not inside. But we saw that Khalil Herbert, it was like a 3rd and 20 or something like that. Screen go for 24, that converted. Tight end screen's not working. You're right. And I've called for it a ton. So I got what I wanted. I've learned that there's something going on with the screen game, and it's been like a 6-year thing. This goes back to fucking Matt Nagy. So I don't know what the issue is with the Chicago Bears and being able to hit screens, but it's significant. And that's something that's also manufactured, not as much on Justin to read the field and get the ball out quick to his hots, but hey, there's a ton of pressure coming on. Let's slow this pressure down by doing this, right? Similar to what Brian Dabble was doing with Daniel Jones and his rollouts. Like, I don't know. There's something going on there in terms of either scheme, how it's being taught. Because there's not a lot of things that are working in terms of manufactured slowing down the rush. It's not working. I don't know if it's just teams are like, hey, we don't respect your offensive line. We don't think Justin Fields is going to be able to make a decision quick enough. So fuck you. We're coming full guns at it, and we're not going to let him get outside the pocket. But it's just there's a disconnect there.
I mean, to be totally honest with you, Lucas, I'd be interested to see what a stat looks like of what formations we're running these screens out of. Like, are they incredibly predictable? Because I don't understand how a guy like Justin Fields, who isn't necessarily like a low line thrower, you know what I mean? He's not necessarily a guy who ever really throws at his receiver's feet. I'm not understanding how he's getting so many footballs batted at the line of scrimmage. Like, is it predictable to the point where it's like, if you see this formation in this situation as a defensive lineman, just put your hands up because chances are you're going to get a hand on the ball. Like, there's things there that I'm still not totally understanding that are not working in the screen game. Like, I don't know if it's just that they are that predictable in what formation they're being used in or the timing of the play call. Like, I don't quite understand it so
I feel
far.
like screens are predictable until they're not predictable. Because anytime there's a third and long, it's watch the screen, watch the draw, right? Like anytime there's a long play where you need to get chunks, you get backed up and you're 2nd and 25 after a loss of down penalty or something crazy, right? Like you're always watching for the screen at that point. I think it has more to do with execution. I'm sure look and pre-snap makes it harder, but that's why I'm saying there's a disconnect. I don't know what it really is. Like maybe I should go back and just look at all of the screenplays in general. But there just seems to be a disconnect because screens are all about execution, right? Like sell the fake, make sure that the defense, get your hands as an offensive lineman, get your hands on someone enough to make sure that they feel like they've won, so they're not backtracking, but then get up in front and make blocks ahead on schedule. So I don't know what the deal is, especially for a team that's shown to be pretty good at getting to the second level. You would think they can execute a screen well. I do think our running back screens have gone a lot better than our screens on the exterior. Tight end screens are still mind-boggling to me, to be honest. But I kind of want to move forward into something that is another major concern, overarching. And I think it's kind of epitomized by a series of plays at the end of the game. And that's when the Bears decided, I believe they ran the ball 4 times, got a first down on one of them, but ran the ball 4 times when they were down 8 with like 5 minutes left to go in the game. They wound the clock down to like 3:30, and then decided to punt when it was 4th and 4 from their own like 45. Now, to be honest, the result of that was what you would want. They downed it within the 5, got a 3 and out, and had a punt back, and then our guy Velus Jones muffed the punt. And that's kind of how the game ended, right? And it's horrible. It's horrible to have someone in their NFL premiere in that spot make such a mistake because for a fact Velus Jones is thinking, I'm going to make my mark on this game. I didn't get any offensive snaps, like didn't really have many chances for a return. That was his best chance for a return, and he just fucking muffs it, dude. And that's the game, right? But to me, the more foreseeable and worrisome problem is the fact that they punted there on 4th and 4. Like Justin Fields played well enough with the offensive line and everything. Like he played well enough to the point where you should let him throw on 4th and 4 there. You shouldn't have ran the ball 4 times in general. You should have been trying to move the ball through the air. And I mean, don't forget, Justin Fields is one of the most elusive runners at quarterback. I think I would put him at top 5. If his passing game became more respectable, he would be like probably top 2 right behind Lamar in terms of running. Josh Allen's also a huge threat, but you're talking about getting chunk plays. Justin's someone that hey, we get him on a design rollout, pocket breaks down, shit like that, he can still go get you 12. So it's not like he's just throwing the ball away and stopping the clock. Like you can coach that into him. So it's ultra conservative. And those types of calls, running the ball 3 or 4 times with 5 minutes left to go in the game, when you're down a full score and a 2-point conversion, you're playing for the tie at that point. You're playing not to be embarrassed in the way you lose. Because if you give that up and your defense lets up a first down or 2, that's it. That's the ball game, and the deficit's raised by another 7 or 3 points. So to me, it was an extremely cowardly decision. I love Matt Eberflus, but there's a little bit too much prehistoric in his game right now. And I don't know if that's because of the state of the roster right now and him just trying to keep things together and not make sure the Bears don't get their shit rocked, or if that's part of his methodology as a head coach. This is the way we're going to run our team, because it worries me.
Well, yeah, and Lucas, we actually talked about this before we ended up hopping on here. I guess what I'm taking away from it right now And maybe this is me just kind of speaking to somebody who believes in Matt Eberflus, and I'm fine for that being used against me with this argument. I'm totally cool with that. But I really think with where we are right now, it's kind of the same excuse I've used with Luke Getsy about him kind of being the first time play caller and kind of getting some time to get entwined with the offense and being able to call plays and knowing how to go off script. The biggest thing, and I actually talked to my dad about it during the game, and I had to kind of explain to him what Matt Eberflus meant by it when he said it, is Matt Eberflus has really said throughout this entire process, throughout the entire preseason, throughout the entire offseason, that his offensive coaches are going to be able to run the offense, his defensive coaches are going to run the defense, and he's going to focus on everything on a play-by-play basis. Now, do I think that's something that's coming into account here? Like, is he handing off too much pressure to guys like Luke Getsy, who don't quite have enough experience, calling plays and being able to like call an offense where we're getting those conservative type play calls with those runs? Does Matt Eberflus have a little bit of say so there, on a game by game basis where he's going to Luke Getsy and being like, hey, I want to be conservative on this drive, or hey, I want to try to, put it down, try to get a little aggressive on this drive. Like,
Well, to interject,
I want to know how that dynamic works a little bit before I really am ready to start pointing fingers. But I'm with you, Lucas. It's something that's definitely concerning, especially in big moments in that game. As I kind of said earlier, and I'll kind of get this out and I'll let you kind of take over, is like, Matt Eberflus being being a first-time head coach and being a long-time coordinator, he's probably run into situations with head coaches where maybe his head coaches were just a hair overbearing, where like their head coaches are like, hey, Matt, you're doing a good job, but I want you to do this here. Like, and maybe that's something that rubbed Matt Eberflus the wrong way when he was a coordinator, where it's like, once I get to be a head coach, I'm going to hire my guys. I'm going to let my guys do their thing. And I'm not going to try to get in their way because I feel like that's the best way to handle it. And maybe it's a situation Matt Eberflus has to realize, just by trial by fire, that like, hey, I am the head coach, man. I'm the boss. Like, I have to be this person. I have to be this final line of defense for my coordinators to be like, hey, even going to Luke Getsy as a defensive guy, being like, hey, man, as a former defense coordinator, a guy who used to game plan against offenses that you're calling, I don't like anything you're doing right now, if I'm being totally honest with you. You need to be able to have those open conversations. And, we're not in the coach's room. We're not on the sideline. So we don't know how that dynamic plays out yet. But if it continues moving this way, where we see these conservative play calls and, Matt Eberflus just kind of continues to let it happen, that's where we're going to start running into some issues. I think this is something that if we continue to see it by like week 7, week 8, week 9, that's when I think the worry is really going to start creeping into my head personally.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the interview, and if I find it, I'll send it to you. But he did say, like, when they ask him his role in the offense, like he's a part of the game plan, putting it together. And he does say, like he said, he'll mention to Getsy, like, hey, this is working, so keep running this, or this is what they're trying to do to you defensively, like account for that type thing. So I almost worry the opposite. Is he too overbearing? Because you would think a younger guy who used to be a quarterback, um, would want to throw the ball more and would want to try to light up the scoreboard a little bit more and take a few more risks. And then we get a guy that comes from a very traditional system, a very traditional coaching tree, implores the hits principle with Rod Marinelli and like, I mean, to me, this feels like a lot more Flus game plans than it does Getsy game plans. I don't know, though, because I don't know Getsy well enough. I do think there is some validity to saying they're both first year guys, and they're trying to to kind of learn how to do things the right way. And I also, I mean, like we talked about prior to the show, like we wanted a CEO head coach. We did not want a guy that was so wrapped up in his own defense or his own fucking offense that he had no idea when to call a timeout and shit like that. So I definitely prefer the Flus type approach. But my question is he like, hey man, Justin's running for his life. You got to keep running the ball. You got to keep running the ball to make sure that they're at least filling their keys and stuff like that for when we do decide to throw. It just feels like a lot more of a traditional, dude. It feels like we're stuck in a fucking time loop. Like it feels like we're back to 2006. But the only problem is you got a lot different quarterback than Rex Grossman. Like you don't need to do this with Fields, and we need to see this guy take steps. And I felt like this is a game that early we really did see Fields take some steps. Yeah, man, I think that what I was just gonna say, but the offensive line and Whitehair going down, that's significant. He sprained his MCL. It's going to be 4 weeks. So just to get that out of the way, but protection wasn't great, but you saw a significant difference when Whitehair left, and it was Patrick and Mustafa there to both be exposed regularly on the interior. And that's a different complaint about Ryan Poles. But
Yeah, no, and that's something that we've gotten into quite a bit, and that's something that if the season continues the way it is, it's going to be something we're going to hammer really in the off season a lot. But I guess really to kind of give perspective, I saw a tweet that kind of talked about how much Justin was taking hits this game, and these were necessarily not hits that were necessarily his fault. You know, you could probably give one or two to him. I'll give you that. But like with the way we were getting blitzed and just not picking him up, he was getting hit so damn quick. It felt like the Cleveland game a little bit last year, where Justin just got his brakes completely beat off the entire game and he didn't know how to react to it. And like, if we're going to talk about the growth, and I don't want to just sit here and talk about Justin Fields because we already talked about him quite a bit, but like, I thought he did a good job responding a little bit better to getting hit essentially every single freaking play post third quarter. You know what I mean? Like, it was to the point where Justin, they were sending the house every time. They didn't care if you knew it or not. They knew that Lucas Patrick was going to get pushed into the backfield, that Sam Mustipher was going to biff on his pass rush. I mean, it just got to the point where the interior of the offensive line was just an absolute nightmare. And that's something we're going to continue to see moving forward with that Cody Whitehair injury, man. So it is a situation.
Figure something out too, because like, it was very clear they put on pass rush snaps, they put a man head up on Mustipher and then made sure that Jenkins also had a man head up on him and Patrick had a man head up on him. So they essentially forced the Chicago Bears to say, you have this guy that you've been putting out there and getting help from everyone else and hasn't been exposed yet. We know what the fuck he is. Your fan base knows what he is. We're gonna force him to black guys one-on-one, and you're gonna lose every fucking time, dude. And that's very clear. So you need to make an adjustment moving forward. If you trot Mustipher out there at center, you better have a fucking good backup plan, because Khalil Herbert's not the greatest fucking blocker. He also was getting his shit rocked in pass pro. Like, Montgomery, sure, he can step up and help Mustipher, but you can't expect that from Khalil Herbert. So I mean,
and you can't even really expect that from your running backs as a failsafe. Like, that's how bad we are at center.
Block nose tackles. No, yeah,
exactly. You know, like, dude, Dexter Williams shouldn't be, or whoever the hell was playing defensive tackle. But he shouldn't be getting through to our fucking running back. Dexter Lawrence. This is a guy who was a former first round pick who's been a relative bust for the most part, and he killed us for 2 sacks. Matt Eberflus even brought that up. Like, he brought up the point that our interior offensive line played bad, and that a guy like Dexter Lawrence really kind of, you know, hammered his meat all over Justin Fields.
Someone finally called the Bears chips. They said, okay, you have such a good running game. Let's stack the fucking box. Let's see what happens when you have guys that have to take one-on-one battles, and they're typically guys that are getting help. And it's going to be the strategy on defense moving forward. I cannot stress this enough. I hope that they are shuffling things around. I wouldn't mind seeing Patrick back at center. I don't know what the fuck's going on at this point. I know, like, supposedly he had a brace on his hand. He's not playing well for the signing he is anyways, but like, hey, shit, man, you could rotate Borum in at left guard, try him out, and put Reef at right tackle. Because right now, your biggest problem is going to lead to your quarterback taking unnecessary hits. I will say, though, I don't think it was Bain and Garfield when it comes to Cleveland versus this Giants game.
Well, I feel like it still felt like he was running for his life. Like,
he was.
It was bad. Like, taking 6 sacks, like, regardless of if you want to say Justin's holding on to the ball too long or not, like, it's not great. And I feel like Justin at least responded to it a little bit better than, say, he would have a year ago. And like, that's just incremental growth that I see it from. But like, dude, I 2
or 3 too.
Like, you can't sell me on the fact that they're like, if you don't want Riley Reef on the starting offensive line, like if you don't want to move Larry Borum or something like that, which I actually like that idea a lot, Lucas, but I know guys like to keep their guys wherever, especially the younger ones. Like, you can't convince me that there isn't a center or a guard on a practice squad on 31 other NFL teams that isn't better than what we're getting from Sam Mustipher. You can't convince me that there's not a vet out there who would play for vet minimum, who's probably just fucking working out in their backyard, that isn't better than Sam Mustipher. And like, this isn't against anything as Sam Mustipher as a guy. All things considered, he seems like a fucking awesome dude, you know, maybe a little block happy on Twitter, but there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, at least he can block something. But regardless, there has to be something better out there than what we're getting, because it's to the point where it's like self-sabotage to start him at center every game.
Well,
Like,
and
if they're, because it just shows that you're not willing to explore better options. And like, I don't understand where this loyalty form comes from anyway, because Ryan Poles has shown early on he's not loyal to Ryan Pace guys. So like, I don't understand. Like, okay, he goes and picks up his quarterback. That's fine. Like, you can go fucking, you can have anybody on your offensive line like do that. And I feel like Tevin Jenkins does a pretty good job of that anyway. And before that, Cody Whitehair was usually one of the first people to the fucking pile as well for Justin Fields downfield. But like, if you're only keeping him out there for this, like, you know, machismo fucking, I got to defend my quarterback bullshit, like, your evaluation process is very, very wrong, I guess is the best way I can put that.
well, and there's something flawed, and I don't know if this comes from the GM or if this comes from Flus or Getsy or where it comes from. But dude, we've been talking about this, and while other podcasts or other people will tell you everything is fine and fucking peachy, it's not, dude. It's extremely alarming when you rotate at your right guard position because of someone not having a good Wednesday at practice or whatever it is. Like, we've been talking about this. And if you go look at the stats, Duke. Who gave up pressures last week? Everyone but Tevin Jenkins and Cody fucking Whitehair, brother. Everyone but Tevin. And I get it. There's less snaps, but it's become evidently clear to multiple people and multiple bloggers that I trust their film breakdowns. I'm watching them talk about Tevin Jenkins. Like, he is playing at a plus level, and Lucas Patrick is not playing at that level. And I understand when you have guys that you pay $12 million to come in and be a starter, you're going to have to prioritize him. You gave Lucas Patrick backup money, so you treat him that way. He should not have a starting spot on the line just because Getsy brought him over and they paid him $2.5 million or $4, whatever the fuck they paid him, right? And I hate to have Patrick get the brunt end of this when it's really Mustipher that's been the main issue on the interior. But we were always one offensive lineman on the, like, getting hurt from being a complete fucking mess. And that's what we're looking at right now. There's no succession plan for fucking Sam Mustipher, or for Lucas Patrick at center. Now, if Cody Whitehair is hurt, now we're looking at Lucas Patrick at left guard, Sam Mustipher still at center. Patrick isn't playing well enough to fucking overcompensate and help Mustipher the way Whitehair was able to. So now you have Mustipher on an island. You also have Jenkins learning a brand new position. So when you could have had him surrounded by vets, you decided to rotate him in. And there's a flaw in that logic. And while people will tell you everything's fine and rosy and it's a fucking rebuild year and all that, no, that is an actual fundamental flaw that needs to be identified and taken care of. Otherwise, we're going to have bigger fucking problems on the horizon. That's just my personal take.
Well, dude, what's funny is those same people who said that everything was fine had absolutely zero plans of Tevin Jenkins starting football games. And listen, dude, I'm going to be completely blunt about it because I know what I see when I watch fucking film, and I know what I see when I watch football games. Tevin Jenkins and Cody Whitehair have far and away been our best offensive linemen this year. You can't compare it with anybody for me. I think the only person you could potentially make an argument for is like a Braxton Jones. But when you take the rookie blinders off, he's still having a bit of a tough go of it. But we're going to allow that because he's showing that he can probably be a fucking top tier left tackle one day. We're going to let that play out. But I mean, when you look at like Larry Borum, he had a couple pretty brutal plays on Sunday, and I've seen it every week. Whatever, it's something that you can upgrade from, but it's not the worst thing in the world. But when you look at something like Lucas Patrick, who I've been trying to give every chance in the world to, I want to see him at center still before I completely decide that he's just been an absolutely train wreck fucking signing. But I am seeing him get blown back on every single snap. It does not matter if it's in pass pro. It does not matter if it's in run coverage. It's just getting bad. And, you know, sometimes you can have guys like that on the offensive line and you can kind of cover up what they're doing if you have somebody really good next to them. You know, like say if you were to put Lucas Patrick at center and have Cody Whitehair and Tevin Jenkins on opposite sides of him, you can probably band-aid that and make that look actually pretty damn good. But when you have Sam Mustipher, who has still to this day not shown that he is a starting caliber or even a fucking 6-man off the bench caliber offensive lineman, like, I don't know what you expect you're going to get. I'm still shocked that Tevin still looks this good playing next to Sam Mustipher. And I think it only shows that Tevin Jenkins has some fucking superstar potential at right guard. Like, I'm going to go ahead and say it. You can clip this up in a year if you want to, but I think Tevin is the real deal. And I think he's shown it every single game. And I think this idea that even when everybody's healthy, there should be absolutely no snap rotation. Like, Tevin Jenkins needs to have the right guard spot taken down, or even I mean, dude, with how well he's been playing, if you want to try and back out a tackle as well, why not try it this year?
I want to see the tackle. I want to see,
because like, why not? And if with how Borum's been playing, I have to say Borum's been a little rough on the edge, especially in pass pro. Why not try slotting him in at right guard and switching that around and see what that looks like for a little bit? You know what I mean? Because like, while I understand why people are really frustrated with this team, and I'm going to be frustrated with this team, especially with the way that we started, with the way we just played yesterday. But like, my long-term outlook for this season will continue to be, and it has been from the start, is an 8-9 football team that just needs to show improvement to key players so we can really build something for next year. Are we seeing some guys kind of fall from the fray and look like people that aren't going to be here next year? Yeah, we're seeing some pretty early signs of that.
Well, that's why we need to find out who's going to be here next year and stop throwing shit at the wall.
Exactly.
It works out.
Yeah, like, I mean, I don't know. Like, it's a situation where people got way too high on this team. The 2-1 start didn't help. And now we're here at 2-2 when people are ready to jump off freaking bridges. And it's like, buddy, you should have been here from the fucking start. Like, you got to know it's a process. It's going to be rough. It's going to be brutal. But like, we're going to be able to see who on the coaching staff we want here next year. We're going to be able to see who on this roster we want here next year. We're going to be able to see what Ryan Poles does in an off season that he has a ton of money to spend and an open checkbook. So growing pains suck. There's no doubt about that, but it's just something that it seems like we're just going to have to fucking deal with, especially with the Whitehair injury. I mean, it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah. To be honest, I really hate to rehash the whole Poles thing, but I do want to say this because it's something that's coming up right now. All of Poles' mistakes are being blamed on Ryan Pace. And yes, Ryan Pace did not put this team in a good cap situation. Yes, Ryan Poles needed to clear the books. He needed to do that. He needed to let go of some players. He needed to clear some space. There was some stuff that he had to do for sure. But there was a conscious choice to offer Larry Ogunjobi a $13 million contract when there were multiple interior linemen that went right around that fucking number that Ryan Poles was not able to bring in through free agency. So don't tell me he couldn't have signed anyone. He chose that I'm going to draft 7 guys in the 5th fucking round, and I'm going to get a Schofield and a Reef way after and a Lucas Patrick. I'm going to fucking do the bare minimum on the offensive line. So at the end of the day, dude, this is his team. Yes, I understand he wasn't put in a great spot, but he was put in a much better fucking spot than GMs in their first year are in. There's a reason why he was able to, it's not like he waved his magic fucking wand and was able to make sure that there was no dead cap next year. That's the way this team was fucking structured. That's the way Pace structured his contract. So you can get out of them. If there's a break glass in case of emergency fucking type situation, you can rebound in a year. Like that's how the salary cap was set up. You can go back and look. We didn't have to move on from Khalil Mack this year. We could have gotten the same amount of value for him after a year with the Chicago Bears and then gotten out of his contract for half the dead money. We could have done that. We chose not to. We chose to fucking trade him for a second rounder and eat all that dead money this year. So this is his roster that he is constructing. And I'm not going to give a judgment on Ryan Poles until after next year's offseason, because he has to spend money. For the people that think he's too cheap to spend money, he's got to spend $100 million to get up to the cap floor. Minimum got to spend $100 million. How that money gets spent, where it gets spent, that's a whole nother thing. It's a lot easier to tear down this motherfucker than to build it back up. So you can't give a guy credit for cutting a bunch of players. You had one job. Your one job was to evaluate Justin Fields and give him enough protection in order to do that properly. And you failed at that job in your first year. There's no other way to slice it, okay? I'm not saying that this is his destiny as a GM. I'm not saying he's a bad GM. I'm not saying he's a good GM. I'm saying that he failed at his one responsibility this year. That's my opinion.
I'm saying, and to just double down with what you're saying, is it's the evaluation process with him. Like, anyone who's crowning him, you're wrong. Anyone who's saying that he's the worst GM to hit the Chicago Bears, right now, you're wrong. You know what I mean? Like, we just do not have enough information on the entire situation to really gauge what he's doing. But like, you have to be able to point out things like this when he messes up. You know what I mean? You need to be able to be honest with yourselves. Because like I'm seeing people already jump to, it's Justin Fields, it's Matt Eberflus, it's this defense, it's Roquan Smith isn't being enough of an impact player on defense. It's we drafted, our the guys on defense that we drafted aren't playing up to snuff. At the end of the day, it's Ryan Poles who brought this roster together. Like the coaches can only do with what they were given, and they're not going to go and bury their guys in a press conference or be like, hey, this guy is fucking terrible. You need to address it right now. Cause they all kind of came into the season understanding like, hey, we have a lot of money to spend next year. So it's kind of like, it's the evaluation process for everybody, but I think people need to be more honest with Ryan Poles, like, because I feel like it is such a taboo topic to talk about with other Bears fans or with any Bears analyst to even insinuate that Ryan Poles didn't do an effective job in a certain area, and it's immediately pushed off to somebody else. And I think the more you push that off, the more you're going to end up in 3 years ignoring everything that a guy like Ryan Poles does. And then by the time you figure out, hey, he's either good or bad, it's fucking too late,
Yeah. And I mean, like you think about it too, even if Poles was not in on Fields at all, if he was like, my plan is to move on from Justin Fields in a couple of years, you still got to put him in a good position to look good enough. He's one of your biggest assets other than Roquan Smith. So you got to put him in a good enough position to look good enough to go ahead and get some sort of value for him. And you're not doing that, even if that was how you felt about him. And it's even worse if you do feel like he's the future and you made sure to surround him with dog shit to make sure that he doesn't do well. I didn't ask for you to put a Super Bowl contender together in 1 year. I didn't ask for that. It wasn't possible. But I the one thing I asked of Ryan Poles was to protect Justin Fields. I didn't even ask for weapons, bro. Didn't ask for fucking weapons. I just asked you to make sure that this guy stays fucking upright. That's it.
Yeah,
I mean, give him the benefit of the doubt because he's a former old lineman.
Yeah, and I mean everybody jumped for joy when we signed freaking Riley Reif and Michael Schofield the day before training camp, and
there's a reason why they were unsigned.
Where's their impact on Sundays right now? I mean, Riley Reif looks pretty good on field goal coverage, but in all honesty, and I think there's an argument to put Riley Reif on the field right now. But
yeah, and you talk about a guy that's just the lesser of evils, right? It's not like, hey, Riley Reif's going to be a plus player. It's like he can't be worse than Mustipher. I'm at the point where it's like, hey, man, what about some of these rookies? Play Patrick at center. Like you drafted Zachary Thomas. I know one of them got injured for the year. I think it was Kramer, but like, what about Carter? Why not try him out? Like you can try things right now, right? Like you're not married to Sam Mustipher.
I'm about ready to see what fucking Pat Scales can do at center. Like I'm ready to try anything at this point, Lucas. Like have a snapping competition at practice. Like, cause it's just not working. It's not.
And you also have to be able to acknowledge the reality of the disconnect, right? And it could have just been a fucking mistake in a panic moment. Yeah, that's what I said. Carter, like, why not? Why not try him out, right? Because, like, there is a disconnect. If you are a guy that believes in building through the draft and not signing free agents, like big ticket free agents, and only kind of filling holes via free agency, which I prefer that strategy. I like that strategy. If that's your plan, how do you cut out a third-round comp pick for Allen Robinson and a fifth-round comp pick for James Daniels by signing a slew of guys like Byron Pringle, who I actually liked, Lucas Patrick, another guy that I actually liked. You look at Justin Jones, Al-Qadim Muhammad, like got two guys that are getting their shit rocked on the defensive line, contributing to us having the worst rushing defense in the fucking league. Like we haven't even gotten into the defense. Sure, the defense looks good in terms of points allowed, but during the game, man, it's like they're fucking holding on for dear life. And there's a couple guys that are making. Thank God for Eddie Jackson, man. Like, I'll say, like, I hope they want to keep him. I hope they keep him around if he's playing this way. But if they fucking did one thing, they increased that guy's trade value to the point where you could probably get something legit for him if they wanted to. But it's just fucking, dude, he's made some mistakes and people are absolving this guy like, oh, it's all Ryan Pace's fault. No, it's not. Ryan Poles has a hand in this as well. He could have made more moves to at least protect his quarterback and evaluate him properly. He didn't. And the moves he made were not good enough.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Lucas. This is definitely something it's going to be something we're going to talk about throughout the season, if we're being totally honest. But I do think this is a good opportunity to get into what the defense did on Sunday. I thought me and you made some really good points on the pregame podcast where we were talking about kind of the best strategy of how to beat the New York Giants, and we kind of saw the exact opposite of what we did. Our strategy was be able to contain Saquon Barkley and force Daniel Jones to beat us. Be able to have a contain or a quarterback spy, somebody to keep an eye on him out of the backfield. Because as much as everybody likes to meme on Daniel Jones, and I saw a lot of it on Twitter, even during the game when Daniel Jones was just dicing us up on the ground, they're like, "We're really letting Daniel Jones dice us up on the ground." It's like,
we talked about it.
Yeah, that's actually a legitimate threat of Daniel Jones. Like, if you're actually being objective and you fucking get more news of the NFL more than just fucking NFL memes, like Daniel Jones is a legitimate running quarterback. He always has been. And Dable likes using running quarterbacks. He's made that very clear throughout his fucking career.
Well, so, and I will say Dable had a good plan because we were trying to key in on Saquon Barkley, and that's a big part of why Daniel Jones was fucking going nuts on us.
Well, because we got so freaking paranoid about what Saquon Barkley would do to us, and for good reason. Saquon looks like old Saquon, man, if we're being totally honest. Like, I'm really glad he has come back from his injury because he's had a couple nasty ones.
Great for the league.
Yeah, like, and he looks exactly like what he was drafted to look like. He got drafted second overall for a reason, and people could say whatever they want about it at the time, but like, if he plays to what he is, that's the type of player he is. But anyway, we got so paranoid of what he could do on our front seven while we were loading the box that our front four would just follow him anywhere he was going. And Dable knew it. Dable knew this. This is why they ran out of shotgun, or they ran out of single back formation so often, because they knew if Saquon got a running start from play action, that's where the defense is immediately going to flow to. So Daniel Jones had so many freaking rollouts, just play action boots to the outside, and the only person you would have downfield is a corner, and more times than not it was a guy in Kyler Gordon who was getting absolutely mollywopped on blocks. So like, it was a good strategy, and it was something that, because we were so paranoid about what Barkley was doing, that like we just could not defend it. And it was to the point where, why don't we have a guy specifically paying attention to Daniel Jones on every single down? Give up that one guy in the fucking front seven in the box to only pay attention to Daniel Jones on every down. And by the time we started doing that, it was kind of too little too late with how much they had already gashed us on the ground.
Yeah, it was actually extremely fucking ugly. And this was kind of the thing that changed. You think about it though, they were beating us up through about 2.5 quarters with that rollout. And then as soon as they adjusted and Brisker came in, and I know that there was an injury involved, and we don't hope for that, but Brisker played that rollout perfectly and fucking cracked back on Daniel Jones before he even went to go make his break to roll out. That was when things changed. That's when the defense started to look a lot different. So maybe we were a little bit off, dude. Maybe it was contain Daniel Jones and let Saquon get a little bit on us, and kind of do what the Bears, what other teams have been doing to the Bears. Hey, let's take away everything but your best thing and try to run the ball until you score. Because, dude, both those touchdowns were Daniel Jones. Like, they were doing a pretty good job on Saquon Barkley. For what Saquon Barkley is, I thought they did a pretty good job. What really fucking killed us was that Moreau missed tackle. And I can't even blame him for that. You get him behind the line, there's no reason why, with a hits principle and loaf system, that there shouldn't have been 2 or 3 guys around him to finish and clean up that tackle. It's hard to bring him down one-on-one. That's their job, right? Like a good running back is going to account for one guy and make that one guy miss. It's the other guys that are, and dude, the defensive line was just getting blown the fuck off the ball. I know the Giants have a pretty good offensive line. I know that they've invested a lot in it over the last few years, but like, they were getting their shit rocked. And a lot of people were talking about Roquan getting blown off the ball. No, dude, Roquan literally would have his hands on his defensive lineman's back, trying to read in the backfield to react. Like, they were getting their shit tossed a lot. Both sides of the ball, the Bears got beat up on the line. And that was the sad thing. Cause you were hoping that at least, like, hey, we're going to be that defensive team that we're going to make you earn it. And we didn't make them earn it. They controlled the line of the scrimmage on both sides of the ball. And that's why the Bears lost. That's the number one reason.
Yeah, and it was something that just really wasn't all that promising, because going into this game, we saw how the Dallas Cowboys, with their front four, really kind of controlled the line of scrimmage the entire game against New York. And it feels like Dable kind of adjusted to that and got, even when Daniel Jones was throwing the ball, he was usually on the move. You know, it was a situation where there was no Daniel Jones sitting in the pocket. And that's something we saw a lot last Monday night when they were playing the Cowboys. And that's kind of how he was getting eaten alive. So that was definitely something they were adjusting against. And I don't think we used the blueprint that the Cowboys were using well enough. But it is what it is. There were a lot of mistakes
on the
there.
front seven too.
I mean, I will give Dable credit that they did they did script well against us, but we made a lot of our own mistakes. And I feel like that really kind of hurt us. Kyler Gordon, I'm going to continue to say this until he really does show out. He had another disappointing game. He was a guy who, as physically gifted as he is, he's somebody who needs to be getting through blocks on wide receivers and even tight ends, especially if he's going to be playing in the slot corner role. And he was someone who is continually, even on both of Daniel Jones' rushing touchdowns, he was getting pushed to the fucking end zone. And
I thought he was a little bit better in coverage, but I will say, like, run fits have been a problem. We talked about that after week 1. He's been getting shit rocked in run fits. Like, he's not built to take on linebackers.
Well, and I think two of the biggest mistakes from our two defensive backs that we drafted. One thing I saw with Kyler Gordon that I feel like he can improve on, and this is something that will definitely come with time, but it feels like before the snap he's over adjusting of where he wants to be placed. There was one play in particular where he tried. He was sitting on the outside of the route almost the entire time on the left side in the slot. And right before the ball was snapped, he made this jump to the inside and then ended up getting beaten to the outside almost immediately on the route. It was a play where Daniel Jones was able to get the ball out of his hand quick. And it's like, sometimes you just can't, you can't second question what you're doing. You just have to be able to kind of line up and be able to do it. I don't know if that was a stunt that they were trying to do at the second the ball was snapped, to kind of maybe bait somebody into a throw, but it was something that it just immediately got him out of position and he immediately paid for it. And then even Jaquan Brisker, somebody who we've been raving about, and obviously I'm a huge Jaquan Brisker guy. One play that he did mess up on early on in the game was actually a run fit on play action where he followed the rest of the front seven, kind of similar to what I was talking about a little bit earlier with Saquon. And Daniel Jones rolled out to the tight end and there was nobody within 10 yards of the guy, and that's something that, you see that happen early on with Brisker. And then you see him tighten that up throughout the rest of the game. Yeah. Like you see like that growth already in his game that, like, if he makes a mistake, he learns from it immediately and he moves forward, like understanding what he can do out of that the next time he sees it. So there's definitely room for growth here. And I think you look at what Jaquan Brisker did later in the game. I thought he had an incredible second half. I was really impressed with him. I'm just continuing to be impressed with Jaquan Brisker, not only just as a player, but as a guy with a high football IQ, obviously early on. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of room for growth here. And I feel like this game is a little bit closer on the defensive side of the football if we just clean up some of the mistakes. I feel like we just did not play a very fundamentally sound football game. And I think that hurt us in a lot of aspects.
Yeah, but we should also be working towards being aggressive enough and effective enough on offense where if our defense holds a team to 20 points, we win. 20 points is not a crazy number.
I agree with that.
You can't expect defense to hold guys to 10 and 7. That's what I'm getting worried about, right? It just feels too much like what we've seen on the field all the time. And there was a bit of comfort to that in hiring Flus and knowing, like, hey, we're going to have some stability here. And I do appreciate it. But at the same time, I thought it was going to come with a little bit more of a modern twist and just like an ability to affect teams in the passing game. And Flus should know it's not like he's John Fox, who's just completely out of it and, was a head coach for a while and hasn't called a defense for, you know what I mean? Like, he was calling defenses last year. He knows what the most successful offenses are doing, and he's trying to take that away from them. So I don't know, man. It's just everything has to be better.
Yeah, no, from every aspect, and I agree with you on the offensive points. There's no reason that we shouldn't be able to get into enough of a groove at some point this season where we're scoring at least 24 points a game. You know what I mean? Like, I'm hoping that this game kind of showed, even with how Luke Getsy's inexperienced as a play caller, and I still will stand on the fact that his unscripted play calls are just still really confusing in a lot. Yeah, they're bad. They're bad.
You can tell the conviction within the players and the execution in the script too. That first drive, they're always on their P's and Q's. First and second drive, they're always playing well. Then it gets
that's
real
what
fun.
I mean. Like, it feels like there's got to be somewhere where it meets in the middle where something finally fucking clicks. You know, I know it's going to get annoying saying this every single week, but there were points in this game where it's like, okay, this offense kind of feels like it's there. It's getting there. It's fucking really close. Then we get our dicks blown off on the interior and Justin's getting sacked within 2 seconds. You know what I mean? Like something's got to give. We need to be able to get healthy up front. We need to be able to protect our quarterback, and our quarterback needs to be able to play confidently, you know, and we saw a little bit of that this week, and that's something we didn't see a lot earlier on in the season, you know. So I'm hoping we continue to move in that direction. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have a whole lot else more, man. I mean,
Yeah. See, to
it
me,
was good.
the ones that are going to frustrate me the most are these types of games, right? Like the Packers probably shouldn't have won that game. Not that the Bears should have won this game, because it goes against what I said at the beginning of the show, that the Bears probably shouldn't be favored to win in any games. But it was a much more winnable game. It was a much more comparable opponent. And it was the type of game that if they game planned and executed better, they could have won it. If the Bears get the shit beat out of them by the Eagles, we'll probably end up talking about what the Eagles are doing and where they're at in their stage of that rebuild, and just understand it, right? Like, I get it. The Eagles are playing at a high level. The Bills are playing at a high level. Packers have been in the playoffs the last like fucking 20 years, or 19 out of 20 years. Like, those games are a lot more understandable. When a team is trying to, when you're that comparable and you have 2 first-year head coaches, 2 rebuilding teams, 2 quarterbacks that you're trying to develop, like, too many similarities to let those games slip. Those are the ones that are going to really bother me.
Yeah, no, and that's what made Sunday so hard, because it's like I hate losing games that it feels like we should be winning. You know what I mean? It's one thing if we go into a game, we're underdogs and we play them tough and we lose. Like, I can live with that, especially this season. But like when things line up to a team like the Giants, who honestly everyone's shocked they have the record that they have this season. Like, and it was the same way everyone felt about our record. Like, this was a game that we could have really shown, like, hey, we're not winning the Super Bowl, but hey, we got something kind of churning in Chicago. You know,
We're taking
that's the point I
seriously.
want to
Yeah.
hit this season. You know, I want to hit this point of like respectability where it's like the Bears are going to play you tough every week. They're probably not going to beat you, but it's a team you need to pay attention to moving forward. Like, and I don't want to go full blown like Lions mode where it's like we're scoring 170 fucking points and giving up 172, but like it needs to hit a point of like respectability where it's like something's churning in Chicago, and a good free agent class and a good draft class can really set this team over the edge. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm looking for respectability. You know, some people are looking for Super Bowls, some people are looking for playoff berths. I'm looking for a team that plays tough every single fucking Sunday, gets very fundamentally sound by the end of the year, has a quarterback that's trending upward, has an offense that's trending upward, and has something to look forward to going into 2023. And games like this, they don't do that. They don't.
Yeah. At least we know if Getsy starts to figure it out, he's not going to be up for head coaching jobs next year.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to sit here, you know, because like I feel like I've been the guy who's really kind of win at Getsy throughout the first few weeks of the season. Like I'm still giving him the benefit of the doubt because he's a first time play caller. Like this is the year to give a guy a leash. You know what I mean? Like next year, no, I'm probably not giving fucking many coaches this much leash, but like this is the year where it's like we need to figure things out, because like if a guy like Luke Getsy, coming from where he comes from, learns how to effectively call plays on the fly, which is obviously his biggest weakness right now, we can be in business. But like it's just hasn't been seen yet.
Yeah. There's just too many. There was way too many predictable run fronts that we ran into this last week. I get it; it's been our bread and butter, but when the numbers are stacked against you like that, you got to find a way to either A, slow down the rush, B, run super simple max protect concepts. Like, you gotta realize that the running game wasn't horrible, but it wasn't going to win us the game. And I think we knew that pretty early on in the game, probably by the second quarter. Like, hey, this running game is not what it's been in the past few weeks. They are taking that away from us, or doing their best to do that. We need to expose them in other areas. And we didn't see the counterpunch. So gonna need to see that moving forward, no doubt.
Yeah, that's definitely something Getsy's gonna have to continue to work on. I mean, because like we could sit here, and this is why we talk about offense probably more than we do defense every week, because it's like we could sit here and
That's
nitpick
the most
everything the
important
defense
thing.
does. But the
Yeah.
defense is still doing enough to where this offense should be able to get back on the field and score fucking points. Like I'm looking for an offense that's a little bit more opportunistic, that gets good field position and really kind of capitalizes on it, because we're just not getting it right now. And I will say it does hurt not having like a guy like David Montgomery, because like I love Khalil Herbert, but having that 1-2 punch of both of them is something to really, really look at. Because Treston Ebner, while he's definitely somebody that projects positively moving, forward as kind of like a long-term option, maybe as like a third back or whatever. There were just certain plays where it's like he's trying to string something outside that's just not there,
You
and
shot
you start seeing
everything outside.
and you start seeing a little bit of that inexperience of like, you're not the fastest guy to hit the corner on the edge like you were in college. You know what I mean? It's a little bit different in the NFL, but I think David Montgomery return to this team. Hopefully we get some good news about him this week. Jalen Johnson, I feel like is going to be a big one as well. Really going to start monitoring his process. I did see him. He was in an interview with 670 The Score, I believe, today. So hopefully if he's doing media appearances, that kind of projects well, because usually when a guy's injured, they just kind of tell you to fuck. They basically lock you in a dark room and they're like, don't talk to anybody. So
He said if he's
hopefully
able
that's
to
a step in the right
go,
direction.
yeah, he said if he's able to go, he'll go. And, it looks like we got to see what happens in practice on Wednesday to see if he's a limited participant or whatever. But my assumption would be that he's going to play as well. We need him to play, because if it's Kindle Vildor did play a lot better game last week than he has in the previous three. But if it's Kindle Vildor and Kyler Gordon as your starting corners going up against Justin Jefferson and fucking Adam Thielen, like, it is someone who's going to pick the Bears to win every game. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pick them to win that game. It's just,
Yeah, no, that's gonna be a pretty
yeah,
tough sell.
yeah, because we don't have to get into it, but you're going to be able
Yeah.
to try to help Gordon in the slot with Jefferson, but that's only if Jalen Johnson is locking down Thielen by himself.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's definitely something we're gonna end up jumping into on the next pod. Basically covered everything with the Bears and Giants that we can. There's some things we're gonna have to look forward to next week that are, we're gonna have to continue to see this offense move in a positive direction. The Vikings have a decent defense. Yeah, and that's a good stat too. Yeah, the Bears have not given up a second half touchdown yet through 4 games. I think that's a really important statistic moving forward as well. So, like, it's not all doom and gloom. There's definitely still positives with this team, and as long as you come in every week with the right expectations, I still feel like you're going to enjoy watching this football team at least grow every single week. As long as we're moving in the right direction, that's going to always be the number one positive. But hopefully we can steal one against a divisional opponent in the Minnesota Vikings. But Lucas, you got anything before we wrap her up?
Nope. That's it.
That's so anticlimactic. That was really good, buddy.
Just invest in weapons and line early and often next year. I don't want to get into next year, but that's my thought this whole fucking week was you need to spend your first and third or first and second on a lineman and a wide receiver, and you also need to get a solid, legitimate veteran like a fucking Zay Jones. Like, not that Zay Jones moves the needle. You're going to have to overpay for him, but I mean, how do you draft a third round fucking receiver and he doesn't even get an offensive snap?
Yeah, I don't know, man. Velas had a tough one.
Problems at wide receiver. It's not like our he's being pushed down because you got Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, and and fucking T Higgins, and it's hard to get a fourth receiver on the field. No, like, it's not like that at all. It's like we need a fucking wide receiver very, very badly. You drafted a guy in the 3rd round. He doesn't get one fucking snap. I get you're trying to work him back from injury, but maybe if his toes were a little bit wet and he touched the ball during the game, he wouldn't have been so fucking overly excited and dropped the fucking ball, because that's a routine play for Velas. Like, he was the SEC Special Teams Player of the Year. I don't think he's even fucking muffed a punt in his time in college, like, or at least lost a fumble on a muff punt. So, like, maybe that moment was really fucking big for the kid and he fumbled because of that. At the end of the day, dude, get your fucking head out of your ass and surround this kid with some talent. Is that better for you?
No. Yeah, that is a little bit better.
Is that better?
I agree with all those. I agree with those points. I do think Velas, I mean, that's just it's tough break, dude, for your first game, man. But it's all positive moving forward. Like, you can't get lower than that. He's got a good head on his shoulders. I mean, he's a grown man if we're being totally honest. But like, I mean, he'll be good. He'll be good. I'm not worried about Bayless. But
no,
anyway,
I'm not. But he's getting. Some people are trying to blame him for the loss, and it's like, no, dude, this goes so much deeper than Bayless Jones. Bad timing, really, an epitome of what the game was. Wish he makes the play and gives the Bears a chance to try to score, but were the Bears getting the ball in the end zone? Probably fucking not. They didn't do it all night.
No, I mean it is what it is.
3 minutes and 30 seconds to go, down 8, bro, from our own 45.
Yeah, no, I definitely get what you're saying. Huh?
I said, how's that for closing notes, Jagoff?
Yeah, no, I mean, you really went above and beyond. I appreciate that. But anyway, this has been the Barely There podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. If, like I said, if you want to join the conversation, like me and Lucas were saying last week, we do see some comments on Twitter after the fact, unfortunately. But like, if you want to join the conversation, like our boy Lap was in the comment section, he always is, and we always end up kind of tossing stuff up there and talking about it. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, man. You will get that you'll get that notification when we go live. You'll be able to join the chat, all that fun stuff. If you're not a live stream person, be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple, any podcasting thing. We have it on our link tree. We share it after every episode drops. Be sure to follow me, Duke Coughlin, on Twitter at that pod guy Duke. As always, join my co-host and follow him on Twitter at Lucas Perfetti 46. And I got nothing else. This is Barely There, and bear down.
Bear down.